Thank you, music team. That was lovely. And Claudel, who's a wonderful, wonderful minister, was my mentor at Unity Spiritual Institute. So she remains my mentor and guide. So it's very timely and nice to hear one of her songs. So we're continuing today with the series Tales That Teach. And Tales That Teach are about, it's about storytelling from different paths. And from a Christian path, the storytelling is Jesus' parables. Now, great thinkers and spiritual masters for ages have talked about a higher realm of awareness that is within each of us, a state of mind, a way of thinking, a type of perception where we experience the ultimate sense of well-being. The Buddhists call this awareness nirvana. The Hindus consider this awareness a mystical union with Brahma, their chief god. The Zoroastrians called it paradise, and they say that the loveliest even becomes lovelier. Now, Jesus referred to this as the kingdom of heaven. He said it's accessible to every person here and now. His entire ministry was based on the kingdom of heaven, and every parable was a kingdom of heaven parable. He had discovered within him that greatly, he discovered this awareness within him that greatly increased his living experience. And it became his goal, his primary objective, to teach others the same. Jesus didn't see himself as being an exception. He saw himself as being an example, which could be taught to everyone. He said, what I have done, you can do also, that the kingdom of heaven is within you. Now, the Gospels were originally written in Greek, and in Greek, the word kingdom means realm. The word heaven means a process of rising up to higher levels of happiness and empowerment. And Unity co-founder Charles Fillmore describes heaven as the realm of divine mind. So we're looking at the kingdom of heaven as a realm of complete awareness. A realm that we all have the capacity to achieve. So the kingdom of heaven translates to a higher realm of being, a higher realm of awareness within us, which is characterized by greater degrees of peace, happiness, empowerment, and love. Now, there's 30 parables in the New Testament, and they were not placed in sequence at random. They were placed as stepping stones, so that each builds upon the one before it. Shortly after embarking on his ministry, and after teaching the first 3 parables, Jesus realized that something was wrong. People weren't getting it. So this 4th parable, which we're going to go through today, was his response to a problem. And it's the parable of the sower. It's also called and referred to as the key that unlocks deeper levels of meaning in the other parables that come after it. So this was this parable was a catalyst. This parable appears in 3 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Now, Matthew's was the first to be written, and Mark and Luke based their versions on Matthew's version. So here's the version. I'm going to read Matthew's version. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat by the seaside. And many people gathered around him, so that he had to go sit on a boat so that all people that were standing on the seashore could see him. And he spoke of many things to them in parables and said, Behold, a sower went out to sow. And when he had sown, some seeds fell on the roadside, and fowls came and ate it. Other seed fell upon a rock, where there was not sufficient soil, and it sprang up early because the soil was not deep enough. And when the sun shone, it was scorched, and because it had no root, it dried up. Another seed fell among thistles, and the thistles sprang up and choked it. And other seed fell on good soil and bore fruit, Some 100-fold, some 60-fold, and some 30. Now listen to the parable of the seed. Whoever hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away the word which has sown in his heart. This is that which was sown on the roadside. That which was sown on the rock, this is he who hears the word and immediately accepts it with joy. But it has no root, except for a while. And when trouble or persecution comes because of the word, he immediately stumbles. That which was sown among thistles, this is he who hears the word, but worldly thoughts and deception caused by riches choke the world, and it becomes fruitless. That which was sown upon good soil, this is he who hears my word and understands it, so he bears the fruit and produces some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. So we see here that Jesus is telling a parable about a farmer. The farmer went out to plant seeds, hoping that he would have a bountiful crop. Now, it's important to know, as I've said in the past, that when you read the parables or listen to parables, you need to place yourself back in the first century. Back then, they didn't plow the soil first before they planted seeds. They just scattered seeds. So that's why there's all these different types of soil. Some rocky, some shallow, and some good soil. So as the farmer went out and planted seeds to have a bountiful crop, as he scattered the seeds, some fell on the road and the birds ate it. Some fell on a flat rock that had no roots to take root, so it didn't last very long. Some fell in the weeds, and as the weeds came up, the weeds suffocated them. And some fell on the good earth and produced a bountiful crop. Well, we are the seeds. But instead of creating a field of crops, we're creating our lives. The seed represents our potential. We have the potential to become more, to live better, to be happier, to have more peace, and to have more love. And just as the seeds need to be planted on good soil, they need to be nurtured and tended to in order to grow, our potential is totally dependent on what we think. Positive thoughts nurture our potential. And when we nurture our potential, we get positive results. Negative thoughts do the same, but they create the opposite. They create what we don't want. They create conflict. Peace is taken away. So it's really important to look at ourselves and our thoughts, because these thoughts create. Herein lies the problem with the parable of the sower. Some seed falls on the roadsides and the birds take them away. Some fall on the rock, some fall on the weeds. And so it is with us. Sometimes we hear these wonderful teachings about our potential, but they don't take root. We hear them, it's great in the moment, and then we forget about it. Because life happens, and we get distracted. Sometimes we allow negative thoughts from the past to get in our way. Even if we have this positive thought, this positive idea, oh no, that's not going to happen because of blah, blah, blah. So this is the stuff we need to be aware of. And sometimes we let our attitudes or the gossip of others smother the new thoughts that we have, smother the new ideals before they can take root. It's like seeds that landed in the weeds. But this is not the only part of the story. Here now comes for the surprise. Now it's for a little twist. Yes, the soils represent different levels of consciousness and how we behave in the world. But Jesus' focus wasn't on the soil. Jesus' focus was on the sower. Right at the beginning of the parable, Jesus says, "Hear then the parable of the sower." We may interpret this parable to be about the seeds or the soil, but it's about the sower. Listen, Jesus says, a sower went to sow. And with those first few words, Jesus expresses that God so loved that God extended itself and created the sonship. God so loved, he spread the seeds, which is the sonship, giving each seed the pure potential of realizing its divinity. This is about the sower. That the seeds that God spread are full with that divine potentiality, with that divine mind within it, so that it may understand and reach that same divine potential that Jesus expressed. When Jesus explains the parable, he never encourages anyone to be good soil or good seed. He says the parable is about the sower. It is about the one who owns and works the field, the one who owns and plants the seeds. This parable is about a God who affirms that there is potential and possibility even in the rocky, hard, shallow, thorny soil. Even knowing that the seeds may not grow in poor conditions, God scatters and plants anyway. This parable is about a God that declares that the hard-packed soil, the rocky soil, the thorny soil, and the dark nutrient soil, all these soils are acceptable. All these soils are good enough to sow. Good enough for divine law to be scattered on. We are here to realize our divine potential. We are here to realize that we are expressions of that divinity. We are here to know that regardless of the soil that we encounter in our lives, there's more to it than that. That there's truth within each one of us, and we have the potential to move beyond anything that we may encounter. What this parable shows is that our divine Creator scattered grace and love in all of its creations. This shows that our divine Creator supports us in knowing and realizing our true potentiality. Supports us in knowing and realizing that the kingdom of heaven is within us. These seeds in this soil know that they are cherished and loved regardless of the seeming imperfections that which only exist on the physical realm. This sowing God is showing us that the lenses of good and bad soil that we see only in the world of form is not how the sower seeds. That's a tongue twister. The productivity of the soil does not determine whether the sower sows. Whether we are good and holy, whether we are hard, rocky, and thorny, these things do not determine whether or not God loves. God loves unconditionally. God loves all of its divine creations and expressions. Whether or not those creations and divine expressions accept that truth for themselves. We are from unconditional love. We are here to be unconditional love. And unconditional is unconditional. It's not easy. It's not easy to love someone you don't agree with. It's not easy to love someone who gossips against you. None of that is easy. But that's why we're here. To see the perfection, to see the divinity, to see the Christ within each person. And to know their potentiality for them, even if they don't recognize it in themselves. We are here to be that light. You know, it may seem like loving unconditionally is a lot of work. And yeah, it can be when you're struggling. When you're struggling to love someone who does something that's totally against your belief system or what you feel you're here to do. But in truth, it's much harder much, much harder to live from a place allowing our ego to get the better of us. As I mentioned last week, the egos create a cell and imprisons us in our own thoughts, in our own cell that we create. The way out of that is to realize the divine potentiality that we have, is to realize the truth of who we are and living from that place. Nothing brings more intensity, satisfaction, meaning, pleasure, passion, and fulfillment than aligning ourselves with Spirit and functioning from the level of truth that we all are. Jesus' message in this parable is simple. And it's simple and to the point. We are created with divine potential. We are created as unconditional love. It's our choice to live and move through the world of rocky soil and to raise our consciousness above that so that we become the fertile soil where truth grows abundantly and effortlessly. That's our birthright. God only wants good for us. He planted perfect seed, and we are that perfection. Now I invite you to close your eyes and move into your center of being, where we can move into meditation. So I invite you to put your feet firmly on the floor. Relax, take everything off your lap, and just breathe. And with every breath you take, you become more and more relaxed. You allow each breath to take you deeper and deeper within. And within each exhalation, you let go of the concerns of the world. And you focus on the power within you to love. I am a divine expression of God with the gift of being able to discern that which is true and that which is not. I know my essence is of love, and therefore I am love. I now release any negative thoughts, any negative idea or belief that I may have about myself. Any negative thoughts and beliefs that I may have about someone else. I release these. And I allow love to enter my consciousness fully. I hold in my awareness that I am an expression of divine love. And I choose to move through the world from that standpoint. And now I move deeper and deeper into the silence where I commune with Spirit. And I just listen. Now I invite you to bring to mind anyone who may be in need of prayer, be it physical, emotional, or spiritual in nature. We affirm that there's a power and a presence within them that will see them through any difficulty they may be experiencing. We surround them in the light and know that they are whole and one. We know this to be true for them, and we know this to be true for ourselves. And when you're ready, I invite you to bring your consciousness back into this room, back into your body. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes.